These are always fun, you know.
Oh, you say that now. Wait till you're done.
Uh-oh. Well,
Mhm.
you see, maybe I go.
Be careful what you say.
All
Oh,
right, we
which
are
one?
coming in now.
All right.
Have a great show.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks, Roy.
you.
Darkness has descended upon the city, and the creatures of the night have begun to stir. This is the time when the veil between the realms of the living and the dead is the thinnest, and all that is not what it appears to be. Like a lone sentinel, one candle flickers in the night, revealing all that lurks in the darkness. This is Ghost Chronicles, Book of Shadows. Welcome to the nightmare.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I am Ron Kolick, that lone candle flickering in the darkness. And with me, that wicked witch from the west, Marla Brooks.
Hello.
Hey, so we got a guest tonight. So,
I know.
yeah,
That's good. And a
yeah.
good one, too.
Oh, well, we'll find out.
We'll find out is right. We'll have to see.
He is the godfather of the macabre, Paul Gambino.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, definitely. I'm probably old enough to be the grandfather of the macabre.
Well, you see what I did there, because Gambino, that's kind of like a, it's
You're right.
you know,
You're
yeah,
right.
a name, so we just do a little thing there. He's he's an author. He's a editor. Well, he does a lot of stuff. He's written some really, really interesting books, which is
Yeah.
why we have him on the air. He
Well,
may
I
be
want to thank
sorry,
you.
maybe sorry he's here, but that's
No,
enough.
not at all. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy.
Very happy.
Well, we're just getting beginning. Maybe later you change your mind. No.
So,
You
so
guys
Paul,
keep saying that. I better be careful. I
you
don't know.
better. So Paul, these books are really, really interesting. I mean, the titles are, and the subject matter is just amazing. The morbid curiosities is the one that I'm looking at right now, and it's a collections of uncommon and bizarre skulls, mummified body parts, taxidermy, and remarkable curios. And that's just strange.
Well,
But
Morbid
Yeah.
Curiosity was actually was the first book,
yes,
and that kind of launched the books that came afterwards. And what it actually did do is I had a relationship. I was a collector, or still am a collector.
mhm,
So, but what that did do is it kind of solidified my relationship with oddities collectors, that they could trust me, because many times a lot of these collectors were were interviewed for other things in magazines, and they always were like, oh, these are weirdos, these are this and that, you know what I mean? So I didn't approach it that way. And the other way I approached it, that's the way I approached it philosophically, in terms of how I dealt with the collectors themselves. And the other thing is, all my books are always private collectors. So it's not institutions, it's not museums, but so that was one aspect of it. The other was the photography. I only hired portrait photographers to shoot everything that's in the books. I didn't want the books to look like catalogs, or auction catalogs, where it's just like, so everything was shot as a portrait. So each one of the pieces, and obviously they're inanimate pieces, but
mhm,
they were all shot with as a portrait in mind, and lit specifically for it and stuff like that. And so that also ingratiated me with a lot of the collectors, because their work, or their pieces, their collection, had never been photographed like this. So
mhm,
that was also a big part of it. And what might seem like a small thing, and this is with all my books too, is captions. Captions to me are really important, because then it just becomes a book of, which is fine, but my books aren't photography. They're visually driven, and driven by the photography, but the captions are super important, and sometimes they're important kind of an interesting way. Like there is a piece in Morbid Curiosities where it's I tell this story a lot, and but it kind of is a good way to sum it up. Is that it's one of those little toys. This one happens to be made out of wood, so I would assume it's 1920s or early 30s. And it's one of those little toys. We might have all had them at one time. They were plastic when you would like press the bottom, and the little like clown would like spin around on like a rubber bandy kind of thing. Do you know
Oh
what I'm
yeah,
talking?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so there's a photo of one of those, and there's a piece of paper next to it. You can kind of read it, and it's written, it's handwritten little scrap of kind of like loose leafy paper. And if you look at it at first, you're like, well, what is this doing here? It's really not that creepy. It's really not that macabre. But the the little piece of paper next to it is a note to um the son, and it says, "This was the last toy your mom played with before she died." So, that caption really sends it
Mm.
to another level, and so that's why, and, and that one might be a little bit of a twist and more of a dramatic one, but sometimes the captions are a little bit more straightforward, but they're also, to me, they're all, it's all very important. So, you
So
know,
before we get into all the books and everything else, I've had a lot of different guests in the show, and
hmm
I had a gentleman that collected crime scene
hmm
photographs. That was his thing, and there are other ones that collect body parts. Believe it or not,
Was the
certain.
crime scene Nathan?
Uh,
Uh,
you're asking the wrong guy because
okay.
I can't remember my own name half the time. Uh, which is
Actually, Jeffrey. Yeah, yeah, there are some amazing crime scene photography
yeah,
collectors out there. Go ahead.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. No, don't be sorry. This is a conversation, so you can interrupt anytime you want. The I have friends too that also collect different items, and being in the paranormal field, the big hot thing right now is haunted items and
hmm
cursed items. That's like a big deal now. So, but what do you think drives us as humans to be fascinated by this type of stuff?
I believe, and there's two things I believe why. Um, One is, and this one's like kind of, I can take it from my personal. This is my wife actually said this is probably why, and she's probably right. And I think it holds true for some other collectors, and that is this mortality issue. And if you could surround yourself with items like this, that kind of are either dead literally or are quintessential representations of mortality,
Mhm.
it allows you to have an unnatural or unrealistic sense of control over your own mortality. Um, Not, so you feel you have some control over it. So I think that's it. I think that's one aspect of it. Now, there are some people that collect. We're not talking about people that collect for aesthetic reasons. You know what I mean? There are some people,
Right.
you're right in that case, but people that feel very close to it. Then there are people like that feel an actual and I'll go do that one last because someone mentioned that to me. And then I actually got interviewed by when Morbid Cares, someone from National Geographic, and she brought up a point. And, she was asking the same thing, and she
Mhm.
brought up a point of something that I didn't think of, and I thought, oh, that's very profound. And that was, she said, you know what? I look at your collectors, the people that you've assembled in this book, and it seems like they're grappling with science and religion. And and if you look at the collections, there is a real parallel between the two. So I think that's also it,
Oh,
like,
that's interesting.
like yeah, what to
So,
believe more.
which oh, okay, so it's the concept of belief, whether you believe religion or science more.
Right. And some people actually, there are a lot of outspoken atheists of oddities collectors that collect religious, antique
Right.
religious, mostly Catholic, only because it has a lot. Well,
We got lots of good
it's
stuff.
yeah. I mean, and there's it's an interesting thing there. I guess, and this is maybe because we're in the West, but although a lot of those collectors that collect antique Christian relics, like myself, but won't collect or almost, and I don't collect it as a mockery, but some people do collect it as like this is like a false god or false deity. But whereas
Mm.
the Eastern religions, they'll collect those pieces and have a little bit more reverence for them, you know. And maybe that's just because they feel they're not, they don't know enough about it to make any kind of comment on it, which also leads me,
So a
you
little
know.
afraid of it, are they?
Well, it's a respect thing, I think. I mean, I guess you're aware of the big grave robbing issue in Pennsylvania right now, I assume, right? You saw the article.
I did not. Why don't you hit us with that one? Because
Oh yeah.
it pops up every so often anyways. A lot of
Well, this one is straight up grave robbing out of the
uh
United States, and it's out of Pennsylvania, and it's getting a lot of mainstream press.
hmm.
And it's really it's really damaging to the collectors, um, because human remains, especially bones, does not have to have any provenance. You don't have to have any paperwork. So that leaves the responsibility of the collector to make sure that they're collecting ethical pieces.
Hmm.
Um, and there are ways, I mean, there are some visual um, highlights or whatever that you can spot something that maybe shouldn't be, it didn't come out of, because most of the legitimate work stuff comes out of old medical schools, doctors' offices,
Yeah, we
old
had the
fraternity,
big controversy here in Massachusetts when Harvard.
the Harvard thing,
Yes,
exactly.
that was right. So
You're right. That was huge, and that brought down a lot of people, and um, that yeah. So the reason why I bring that up is that um, you say about I think it's collectors like to these collectors of these pieces like to think that they're curators, and they're also stewards, and have a lot of respect for the pieces. Um, they also say a big question to people that collect things that are I don't want to say questionable, that fall into this realm, especially as the pieces get very old. Um, and they'll say, I've had certain people say, like I'll ask them, well, what wouldn't you collect? And what would you turn down? And obviously they would say they're going to turn down the pieces that they think are illegally obtained or obtained unethically. But they also say a piece that they believe belongs in a museum as opposed to in their personal collection. On the other hand, some collectors will say, when given that question, when people will come to see their collections, or no, and they'll say, well, don't you think this should be in a museum? Many times their response is, well, you go to a museum, and do you have any idea of what percentage of the museum's collection you're actually seeing? And it's a small
right.
percentage. So some collectors feel that they're actually showing their pieces to more people. If this piece would sit in the basement of many museums. And I don't know if I answered your question. Oh yeah, in the sense of why did they collect these
Yeah, why
pieces?
do we collect?
You
Yes,
know
that's
why?
really good.
Yeah. So originally, you know, I guess there's many. I think the most profound is, the one about, feeling a sense of control over your own mortality. The other being maybe this grappling with science and religion. The other thing of actually looking death in the face. Hence, I don't know if you know about this, but if you're familiar with the Odd Fellows,
Yeah,
right? So they had skeletons,
yeah.
and so if you know that already, I won't explain it, but so that was a direct thing about facing death. So I think it's confronting our own mortality. You
In
know,
reality, Paul, I'm sorry. Just because I'm aware of it doesn't mean our audience is. Why don't you? Can you touch upon
Okay,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the Oddfellows had a lot of the it was almost obligatory, I guess, is that the Oddfellows lodges had a skeleton, and the skeleton was used in the initiation, and it was also used. It was used in the initiation, and also a thing that came out of that is allegedly the term hoodwinked came out of this initiation, because what you would wear would be these things that had little flaps on there, like glasses that had little leather or metal flaps that covered your eyes. They would put these glasses on you. They would walk you across the room. You'd stand in front of a skeleton. They'd flip the hoods up, and you'd be face to face with the skeleton. So that was part of it. So there are not countless, but there are plenty of Oddfellows skeletons that do pop up for sale. And so uh, how did we
Is
get
that
on
something
that?
is that something you would collect?
Oh, I have an Oddfellow. I
Oh,
do
so
have an
there you go.
Oddfellow.
Yeah, okay.
I have an Oddfellow, and I actually have a co a funhouse skeleton, because sometimes some fun houses would actually have real skeletons in them.
Mhm.
Back in the 20s and stuff. And a lot of movies actually back in the 20s, it was cheaper to actually have a real skeleton. The interesting thing about the Oddfellows thing in Victorian era is when Queen Victoria finally died, not finally died, but when Queen Victoria died, she, the whole, hopefully, or a lot of people wanted to kind of lift that pall of of doom off of Western Europe and the States, and the Oddfellows switched. Some lodges switched over to very realistic paper mache skeletons, and those are hard to come by, but they will pop up. So, and that
Hmm.
was trying to turn our back on it being so macabre.
So how big is
All
your
right,
collection,
wait,
Paul?
wait, I'm
Oh,
gonna
oh,
get,
yeah, you better get in here because I'll go
Uh,
on forever.
yeah, and you yell at me if I don't. Um, okay, so everybody knows I love backstories.
uh-huh.
So when did you get interested in the macabre and the bizarre, and or how did you?
Yeah. Personally, I grew up in a house. I grew up in my grandparents' home. And this is like super personal, but I believe this is what it is. So I grew up in my grandparents' home. My grandmother got very sick when I was about 10, and she was going to die. And she didn't die. At around 13, she got very sick. She was going to die. This happened all the way up till I was 30 years old, until
Oh,
she
wow.
died.
Wow.
And so this constant fear of death, I think, was like really like in me,
Mhm.
Hmm.
And living in my grandmother's house, she lived in a really cool old house, a lot of drawers, a lot of old credenzas and stuff like that. So it, to me, it didn't. Well, I'll put it this way: in my bedroom, which I do have now, in my bedroom, and I thought nothing of it. I had a life-size Saint Sebastian from a church in Little Italy with the arrows in it in a big, thing. So, and that wasn't creepy to me. And people were like, "This is the creepiest thing I ever." Oh, you know what? You have a photo of it. You see that saying you made like that little thumbnail.
Mm. Yep.
You see that Saint Sebastian you put in
Oh,
there.
it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's life size. That's a life size Saint Sebastian, about 120 years old. That was in my bedroom as a child, and as a I never thought anything of it. I thought, so I think that was part of the thing, So whereas um that's where my and then um it segued from photography, where I would collect post-mortem photographs and stuff like that.
Right.
Other collectors will tell me that it's interesting you bring up to this. Um, if you notice in the books, in all my books, Skulls, Gothic Living, Killer Collections, and Morbid, I try to balance it between male and female.
Okay.
And because people would assume, oh, this is a very male-dominated. I know that's an antiquated term, male and female, but for right now, we'll just use that. Um, So there's a pretty equal male and female. And um, Evan, um, from, that was on Oddities and had Obscura,
Mhm.
Evan Michelson. And when I would speak to her about it, she said, Paul, this is what I believe. And I think she's right. She goes, men or male collectors, they grew up collecting baseball cards, stuff like that. Male collectors have to feel they have to complete a set, or they have to get as many of them as they can, or every example of it. So if they're collecting skulls, they need, skulls that are showing syphilis. They know they need skulls that are, showing bullet wounds. They need skulls, they need the whole thing. They need tribal skulls. They need everything else.
Mhm.
Um, and you do see that. You do see in the auctions and stuff like that, where she said, now this might be sexist, but I'm reiterating what Evan said. She said, Paul, I believe that female oddities collectors collect pieces and what they feel the collection is missing, as opposed to, oh, it's completing a set.
Mhm.
So that's another different, I mean, that's another aspect of when you say, why do people collect what they collect? I think that has to come into it too. I think that might be a more of a universal um, thing that you can apply to the collecting aspect of it, as opposed to the motivation, because you'll ask 10 different collectors of oddities, and you'll probably get like five
Yeah.
different ones,
You know, what's funny though is that the guy I had on with the crime scene, he told me that exact same thing that you just mentioned about difference between male and female.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, exact same thing. So the collection. So when you were talking about this, yeah, I knew about that. But it,
If that is Jeff, who has an amazing postmortem, and his crime scene stuff is unbelievable. And it's funny, Jeff appears in Killer Collections. That's my book about people that collect true crime, dark
right.
artifacts, you know.
Mhm.
And Jeff, I once went to an estate sale in my neighborhood, and I go to this estate sale. And you know how sometimes you walk into one of those things and you're like, I know there's something here. There's something here that's cool. So I go into the living room. Underneath the coffee table, there's like one of these oversized landscapey photos of um, New York City detectives, maybe circa early 50s. All right, so I go, wow, this is awesome. So I take it. I go downstairs and then into the basement. The basement is
Yes.
covered. Did I tell you this story? Do you know this story? Because
I
I
know
told
this story, which is weird. It's really weird. You
that's
haven't
so
been
weird.
you haven't been on the show before, right?
No. So you know how this ends, right?
Yeah, but my
Y-
guests don't. Go ahead.
But you know what? Jeff might have told you this story.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you why, because I'll be quick about it. So I go downstairs. I all right, so you're assuming the guests don't know it. So I'll tell the complete story,
Yeah,
but I'll
tell
tell
the
it
complete
quick.
story.
I
Yeah.
go downstairs. There's photography equipment all over the place, tons and tons of photography equipment. And there's downstairs these little round discs, like white porcelain discs with 0 to 9 on them, strewn all over the floor. I go by the toolbox, tool set thing. I open up a drawer. There's a postmortem photograph there. I could tell it's postmortem, and it's a morgue shot because there's a little triangle underneath the guy's neck. So I know, all right, this is a morgue photo. And I find another one, and I could tell that there's been a shotgun blast to the face, not blowing his face off, but this buckshot in his face.
Right.
But it's also 8.5, 11, very strange size. I grab these two. I go upstairs. I tell the lady, this is. I like to have this and I like that. She goes, you. So I show her those two. She goes, you want these two? I say, yeah. So she says, well, I have 5 boxes of these. So
Mhm.
I flip out. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. I definitely want them. Blah blah blah. Takes me months and months to set up the deal. I go there, and she's right. In fact, there are 5 boxes of them, and these boxes are incredible, and the images in them are amazing, and they're all crime scene photos. This guy happens to be in crime scene photographer from that era. He's also the guy, those little discs are the things that he invented so that instead of putting those little things in the felt, as when you hold in your mugshot, you would turn like it was a turn thing. You would turn 0 to 9 or something, and it would spell it out. So he invented the little that little thing. That's what all
Yeah.
those discs are. So I go and I find these photos. They're fantastic. Some of them are brutal. Some of them are, for lack of a better term, beautiful. But I turn them over. None of them are stamped. There's no information about them. So I'm like, why is that? And he goes, well, what had happened is this guy struck a print for the police department, and he struck a print for himself. But the ones that go to the police department, when you turn them over, they have critical information on them. Where it happened, what happened, any kind of distinguishing, thing. So there's a history behind them. So what happened is, I felt that these images they were just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gory images. Also at a time when people were probably undoubtedly at their worst, and I didn't want to. That's not what I was looking for. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
put in a very low offer. And there was also images there. This photographer was one of the first photographers at Attica. So he had photos of the guards being held by the prisoners. This was an insane collection. I put in a low bid, blah, blah, blah. Guy disappears. I ask him, then the seller, I couldn't find him anymore. I go shoot Jeff's collection. I'm telling Jeff this story. He goes, "Oh, I'm the guy that bought those photos."
Yeah, that must have been. Yeah, he must have. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it must have been Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
his
so funny.
collection, did you see his collection? I mean,
No, I did not. Because
oh,
yeah.
you should follow him. It's Stiff Vintage on Instagram. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He's a great guy. He's got a collection there's another guy, Jack Lord, who has incredible postmortem more, but Jeff is more crime related.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, he was a good interview.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're coming up to the break, so we're gonna have to take a short break, and we'll
You
get back
got
to
it.
look
I'll
at
take a sip of water.
There you go. That works out too. Anyways, you're listening to Ghost Chronicles Book of Shadow right here on TogiNet and Pararex Radio. I am Ron Kolick. My co-host is the lovely Marla Brooks, and our special guest today is author and collector Paul Gambino. And we're brought to you by Circles of Wisdom, 386 Merrimack Street, Methuen, Massachusetts. The Gallant Messier Family Law Group, 50 High Street. Wow. North Andover, Massachusetts, and our very good friends on Ghost Chronicles Radio on Patreon, and Positively Brilliant Candles on Etsy. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back talking a little bit more with Paul Gambino.
Do you have a paranormal event, book, or something else you want people to know about? Then why not advertise it on Ghost Chronicles Radio? With over 150,000 downloads a month, get your message out to an audience that's interested in the subject. We have a plan at a cost that fits your needs. For more information, contact Ron Kolick at anyghostproject@comcast.net or call 978-455-6678.
Located in Illinois, there lies a sleepy little town where nothing is a common occurrence.
You going to that party in town tonight?
Heck yeah! I only turned 18 once.
That is until the night of celebration.
Where the hell is she? Oh no. No, Jessica!
From the creators of Shadowhunters, Bite Me, comes a tale of primal terror and grindcore mayhem. Shadowhunters, kill, Jessica, kill!
Oh, are you reading me? Come in. Hello? Greetings from the Shadow, and welcome to Shadowzine. My name is Jeff Belanger. I'm an author, podcaster, and explorer of the unexplained. For 30 years, I've been investigating the paranormal, UFOs, monsters, and things that bump in the night. Lately, you may have noticed how major TV networks and even social media networks have been pushing our favorite subject back into the shadows. I say good. That's why I launched Shadowzine, a monthly underground publication that covers your favorite topics in depth by some of the leading writers and researchers out there. If you're looking for 30-second TikTok clips, go somewhere else. If you're ready for a deeper dive, put down your phone and pick up Shadowzine. You can't find it in stores. This is old school print. Head to shadowzine.com and be part of the underground revolution. That's shadowzine.com, and I'll see you in the shadow.
And for those of you who are coming late, shame on you. Ron Kolick is here. I'm Marla Brooks, and our guest is Paul Gambino. And we're talking about macabre, mystical, all kinds of stuff. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff. Anyway, so before we get into the books, and we do have to get into them, it's just like so fascinating just speaking with you, is that there are a lot of collectors. I mean, Mala has a good friend. What's his name? Mala.
Scott?
Yes. Now he would collect anything and everything, you know. And true, you know.
Yeah, he goes
right.
When somebody dies, he goes through the garbage and stuff, and you never know what you find.
Yeah.
And there are other people that have that same thing, like a shotgun effect collectors. And then you have your friend Jeff there, who just collects crime scene photos. Is do you think they do it for different reasons?
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things where if you ask 10, you're going to get 5. Like I used to collect Victorian era photographs. And what happened was the collection started to get not too big. It just seemed like it needed to have a focus. And then so I kept whittling down to eventually it was postmortem photographs, and then even further down to it being mortem photographs of children. So it was a thing and it was
Hello?
yeah, no, I was thinking, and
That was a long thought.
yeah, well, because it's two things. Like what happened is that I, I I had to focus it down, and I don't know if that's because I am not. I am a collector for sure, but I need. I've been able to enjoy and experience collecting on a much grander scale because I know so many collectors and I'm intimate with so many collectors and I photograph so many collectors and I go to these collections. So I get to vicariously experience these collections.
Oh, I get
Um,
it. Yeah.
so that's one reason personally why I don't need this broader collection. I, on the other hand, love collections that are eclectic within the same genre. I'm not a big fan of people who have oddities and then they have, Warhols and they have stuff like that. That's not my thing. I mean, if you look at like The Art of Gothic Living, these people have focused, but it's a lot of the same stuff. Now, Jeff is kind of a unique situation. You bring up Jeff and his concentration is crime scene photos.
Hmm.
And Jeff is unique because that's like 90% or even higher of his collection. He's an anomaly. Most people that collect oddities and macabre oddities have a focus within this broader collection. So yes, um, they'll have a lot of different things, but human skulls will be there, the focus. And then and let's say they're a human skull collector, tribal skulls will be the focus within it. But yeah, I couldn't say that I've come across I've Jeff is the only guy I know that's 1,000%, for best of my knowledge, of those kind of, that specific of a collection. That's a lot of discipline, and he's also a graphic artist guy. That's his thing. So I'm sure that weighs into some of the composition of the photos and stuff like that. Subconsciously or consciously weighs into why he's driven towards
You,
that
you
imagery,
you do
flat.
have you do have people that do collect, like for instance, they definitely do a you like it'll be all what's the word for it? Oh, can't just lost it. Jewelry and wreaths made out of hair
Right,
of
yeah,
deceased,
that's true.
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
Yeah.
big from Victorian age, right? Which is one of your books, right? Myths
yeah,
of
and well,
Victory.
and you're also that she just died, the woman with the largest collection. you
Hmm.
know Once again, though, that you'll yes, but her collection, and then she turned it into a museum, and then she recently died, but I forget how many pieces it was. It was like 2,000 maybe
Yeah,
or
it was a
something,
lot.
and it was
Wow.
but once again, that's not your average oddities collector.
Okay.
Those are the average oddities collector does go in multiple routes. And then sometimes it also comes down to um finance. I mean,
Yeah, that's for sure.
most oddities collectors, and recently there's been an influx of shrunken heads were very hard to come by for a very long time.
Ah,
um
heck, yeah, I could get it when you were kids, right? The little,
yeah, yeah.
the
So
little rubber ones.
We all
yeah.
had one. Yeah.
Right, but real ones, I mean, and when I say real ones, they're real. There's very few that are are not tourist made ones. They're
Right.
real shrunken heads, but they've never been used. They weren't lopped off in battle and wind up being in ceremonies.
Mhm.
Um, but so even those were very hard to come by for a while. Like I say, there were about 10 of them came onto the market recently. But and the price came down, but the real Santa's at 35,000. So, sometimes, yeah, I'd love to have a collection of shrunken heads, but sometimes it's just not feasible unless you're
Right.
a very, but I think you were asking more about the philosophical of why
Right.
people would collect
Exactly.
specific things. And, I like I say, I couldn't even tell you because I don't do that except for Skulls was an interesting book, and there
Mhm.
were one or two people that concentrated on skulls in the book. That was basically all they had, but the array of skulls they had was large. But Skulls, that book, and I'm not trying to push books what I'm saying, but that's my only
No, no,
reference book.
no. Actually, you
Yeah.
should be because
That
that's why you're here.
no, 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 but that's my reference.
Yep.
That's how I know these people, and that's how I know different, aspects of it.
Yeah.
Like, um, like you say, oh, why do they collect, this and in skulls, I put a few people in skulls. There are people in skulls that have hundreds of skulls. But I also put people in that book skulls that have one skull because to me it was just as fascinating or somewhat definitely equally as fascinating. Like, why would you only have one human skull? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it seems like if you're a collector of, the person that has a lot, you're like, oh, well, I'm a collector of skulls. Now, if you have one human skull, that to me is odd. It's like you're not a collector of skulls, of human skulls. So why do you have one human skull?
Mhm.
So it's a different thing there. It's a totally different uh
No, I get
motivation,
right.
you know.
So it all in these books on collections, is there one collection that you absolutely are fascinated by, and say, "Boy, I wish I had
Yeah,
that collection."
I got to tell you, it's Jeff. I mean, I love Jeff's collection. I'm a
Mm.
photography guy too, so
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff's is amazing, but there are so many amazing collections. Like, I mean, there's Ryan Matthew Cohen's in there, and I mean, Ryan's just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and Ryan has stuff that'll, you know, it's museum quality. I mean, and some, Ryan bought out, a medical museum in Germany
Oh, wow.
from the 1800s of all wax, you know, uh, figures. I mean, that are all anatomically opened up and show
Mhm.
everything from a full body to venereal diseases and stuff. Amazing collections. He doesn't even have much of that left because he's gone on to others. He bought out a huge collection in Chicago, of this guy that had a collection of the dead. That's amazing. So yeah, I've seen some really amazing collections. I'm not into the crime stuff. I'm not into as much, but I am fascinated
Yeah.
by that. Some people have some amazing, the crime stuff is interesting, especially the older crime stuff, because you can see not that you can't see it in the others, but the historical value um, is just so grim. I mean, like, noose, they used to sell pieces of the nooses, when there was a
Mm.
public hanging, so I mean, it's just such a commentary on, these happen to be American. So it just happens to, it's like if you study art history, you can pretty much tell what's going on in the world. Well, if you study certain oddities collections, you can kind of tell what was going on in the psyche of the population at the time too, and the crime stuff is really screams of that. I mean, even, Manson, Gacy,
Yeah.
all the big guys, that,
But we have such a fascination with that. I mean, when they used to behead the kings and queens, they would, the guy would actually sell off some of
yeah,
the stuff. So, and even like when Lincoln was killed in the room he died in, that that was just about stripped by people that just came in and took pieces from it.
yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
I know somebody that has,
See, there you
it's
go.
only, it's only like 2 inches by 2 inches, but it's also a very coveted piece because there's blood on it of one of the pillowcases, but it's so funny. Like, I don't, it, it it's such forethought. I wouldn't, I don't even think now I would realize, well, maybe now I would because I've seen it so much, but the people that realize, oh, this is going to be a collectible, this
Mhm.
crime piece, that, yeah, I find that odd, but you will find things. When you talk about like odd things like that, I always ask people two things. One, I ask them what they would never collect or what they wouldn't buy, if it came across them, you know, and then I ask people sometimes, what's the oddest thing they've ever seen, that's not in their collection. And
Mhm.
one thing I thought that really kind of, because I've heard a lot of very odd things, and but this was one of the more unsettling items. And someone told me he knew somebody, and it was no longer active or contagious, but he had a vial of AIDS contaminated blood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, geez.
yeah, and I thought that's pretty extreme. I don't know anybody, you know. So, um, yeah, I mean, some people, have the the foresight that, oh, this is going to be interesting to people, or you know, so. But the crime stuff, I think, you know, is very interesting because of that, and I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm
our
sorry.
time is flying by,
Yeah,
Paul, and I did
oh yeah.
want to get to your books because it's only fair to you.
No, it's
But
fine. It's
you've been
fine.
you have absolutely been fascinating, and I've enjoyed
Yes.
speaking with you.
I've enjoyed this very like I maybe that's because I'm doing all the talking, so please cut me off
Yeah,
then.
but you're doing a good job because you're answering what I
That's what you hear.
yeah, exactly. So your latest book, Beyond the Veil, that's your latest, correct?
Hmm.
Now, you want to tell us a little bit about that one because that
Yeah,
that seems interesting too because that's
that's
another
my
time
first
period.
research book. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
I refuse to do a book that isn't have a tremendous amount of visuals, and there's 200 visuals in the book,
God
but
bless you.
the book isn't it, it's a research book, and it was a natural, they'll kind of naturally come from one another, and obviously, if you were going to pick a book about a time period that was so ensconced in death and mourning, you know, the Victorian era really pops into your head. I mean, there are other ones. I mean, but I wasn't really, if you would have picked ancient Egypt, I guess, that would make a lot of sense. But um, so, I had, there was a lot going on in the Victorian era, and other than just, the the death of the Queen's husband and Queen Victoria setting the tone. By the way, um, actually, Queen Victoria's name, it's called the Victorian. The Victoria isn't her name. It wasn't her name, actually. That was her middle name. Her first name was actually Alexandria. But
Mhm.
um, so while doing that book, people ask me, "Oh, what is it?" And if you read Beyond the Veil, you'll realize now the book is incredibly dark, and it's incredibly macabre, and it's oozing with death. But what I realized while writing the book was what I was writing about was how people in that era lived, also how they died, but because of the way they lived was a direct result on why there was so much death, So that really was a surprise to me. And it was a much better book because of it. So instead of it reading like, oh, there's this, and so many people died from this, and then this happened, and so many people, it reads more like a narrative, as if you were following people, through other, aspects of their life and how, but it's all nonfiction, but it reads that you you touch upon so many aspects of their life, whether it be, entertainment, whether it be decor, whether it be fashion, whether it be the medicine, whether it be their obsession with, the afterworld, and work obviously was a big thing. Architecture was a big thing, you know, so many things came into it, and it's so much about their, like I say, it's so much about their life, but their life, at least, and I'm sure you could have found a small section or a smaller section of Victorian era, whether it be England, Western Europe, or in the United States, that didn't weren't as plagued by it. But if you talk about the cities, they were a hotbed of death and all kinds, and the death also, it also was psychological. There was, it really had a profound effect on their psyche and their mental, the quality of life. And then we had things like not just the Ripper. There were quite a few um, killers out there that were roaming the streets. Um, so there was actually that aspect of danger too. And then you didn't have antibiotics, and so and you didn't have antibiotics, and you had a lot of prostitution, and syphilis is a brutal way without antibiotics. So that kind of like ruined that whole aspect of life. And then you had terrible, you know, you know, tuberculosis was wiping everyone out, and people don't realize now, luckily, the physical effects that tuberculosis has on your body in terms of, eating away certain parts of your body. A lot of people see images of people because syphilis attacks bone, and your nose and your face, and it'll just eat it away. TB did the same thing, and a lot of people will mistake illustrations and photographs of people ravaged by TB and say, "Oh, this person had syphilis." No, this person actually had TB. Not that people that were racked with syphilis. Did you see Frankenstein?
The new one?
Yeah,
I have not. Sorry.
yeah. There's some interesting things in that. One of the people in there has syphilis. And they talk about it, and if you know certain things about it, you know he's a master, and he makes a lot of subtle uh comments about Victorian life, and the dangers of it, and unless you know about it, it's kind of like an inside joke.
Mhm.
But there are some interesting, like there's a like I don't know if you're aware of this, but like green, green was a big color to come out in um in the Victorian era, and it was embraced by the Victorians that had money. So there were a lot of
Purple as well.
right, but green was called Paris green, and it was a green that was made um, by it was in a new color actually. It wasn't blue and yellow, I believe. It was actually this color green. Well, to create that color green, can you guess what was included in that color green?
No idea.
Bile?
Arsenic.
Oh,
So people were getting really, really sick from women were getting sick from wearing green dresses. Green was like a very common color in paint and wallpaper. And, so there it was just so many things that were just so toxic in their world that they didn't know about, so um like like sanitation, like you would think, oh, it's good to live next to a hospital, um because but the hospitals threw sawdust all over the floor. That was the only kind of like way for them to clean up all the bodily fluids that would seep out of all these TB and syphilis people and stuff, and they would shovel up the sawdust and throw it out in the back of the hotel. I mean, the hospitals. And
Jeez.
hospitals a lot of times were backed up by the black community. So not that black kids were notorious for any kid would be notorious for playing, and you know what I mean? So
Right.
there's all this biohazard stuff all over the place. So I mean, if you read Beyond the Veil, it's just like it's just one thing after another, but written in a way, and I'm not patting myself on the back, it just came out that way because it was, it thing it it's an interesting take on how it would be very difficult to avoid getting sick or getting killed, or it was a rough time,
So it was really a look into Victorian era, what life was like
yes,
in
in
Victorian
that big,
era.
in that
yeah.
section of time during the Victorian era.
Excellent.
But it isn't a book on, I mean, I don't go into I actually do go into the music and the artwork, but that aspect of it was how death played a part in
Mhm.
certain people writing certain songs, and, and painting certain photographs, and obviously the literature that came out at the time. Poe was big. Poe didn't actually live during the Victorian era, but he lived before, but it
Right.
was embraced by the, Victorian, so yes, literature is covered, music is covered, fashion is covered, work life is covered, medicine is covered, the wars are covered, the White House is covered. which they called the Black House because I think it was 27 people died in the White House during that time period. It was just a constant state of mourning. Um, so it's definitely an interesting snapshot of a time period that um,
And it's great because we in the future we always judge the past from our own values and concepts. But we don't really understand the past because we don't really take the time to look at what was going on at the time
yeah.
in the mindset of the people that were going through it.
Well, that's the beauty of literature and painting and the arts because it reflects it so if you don't want to, if you don't want to belabor over, you know, history books, not I shouldn't say belabor. I mean, history books are great to read, but I'm saying you can, you know, learn so much about what was going on in history through the arts, because the arts were, very much reflecting what was going on in the times. Um, so,
Unfortunately, Paul, we've run out of time.
oh
Speaking of
no,
time,
that's fine. But
I,
I got
I
to tell you, this was one of the smoothest. I really enjoyed this. It was just once again, like I say, I feel like I dominated it.
oh
I feel
no,
bad
that's
that
what
I
you
did.
were here for.
That's
We
what you
we
said.
wanted
Yeah.
to know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, if people want to find out more about you and your books, Paul, where can they do that?
On Instagram, it's Morbid Curio, MorbidCurio. So that's at Morbid Curio. And all the books are available on Amazon. If you just put books by Paul Gambino, the 5 books will come up. I have a Substack, which I started, which is Paul Gambino at Substack.com. So yeah, that'll do it. My Facebook page is Paul Gambino, but I don't use that as much. But Morbid Curio, Instagram's good, Substack is good, and if you'd like to buy the books, they're all on Amazon. If you put
Yeah,
Paul, you got to put books by Paul Gambino because, as you alluded to earlier in it, if you put Paul Gambino, you're going to get Carlo Gambino. You're going to get all the you're going to get all the mafia stuff, you know. So
anyway, yeah, a lot of them in hardcover too, which is great.
yeah,
I
they're all
mean,
hardcovers. Yeah, and
yeah,
there's
I mean,
Japanese. Yeah, the books are
absolutely.
printed beautifully, and I have to say, every one of the publishers I dealt with, they're beautifully printed. The photography is great, and they took time in printing them well.
Well,
Yeah.
we do have to go. It is the
Yep.
tune. So,
Okay.
Paul, thank you so much. It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure. And you have a
Pleasure's
good
been
night.
all mine. You too, guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe
Good
and
night.
God bless.
From ghoulies to ghosties.